Over the last few days, I've pretty much played the Back to Basics custom game mode almost exclusively. There's only been one or two instances where I haven't been playing that since it was released. And frankly, I think this is one of, if not the best game modes in Battlefield 1 right now. Not just custom games, but game modes entirely. I really enjoy the way it worked out with the standard issue rifles, the reduced vehicles and gadgets and everything else. To the point where I actually think DICE could take this a little further and make a brand new game mode for Battlefield 1, an entirely new mode that I would like to see, and I would call this Trench Warfare. Now, I've seen a lot of people talking about trench warfare in Battlefield 1 already. If you look up Battlefield 1 trench warfare, there's a lot of great people talking about some really cool trench warfare inside the game already. But what I would like to do, as I said, is really bring this together into something solid, into something that has some specific rules, some specific gameplay, and some real intensity to it, the way that I'm seeing inside of Back to Basics right now. So to begin with, I want to start by saying yes, it will be standard issue rifles, but I want to take it a little bit further than Back to Basics does right now. Currently, Back to Basics is based on Conquest, so it's a very large map, and because of that, you have vehicles, and you also have the inclusion of mortars, I believe. I want to get rid of mortars, and I want to get rid of vehicles entirely. And I say that because I want the Trench Warfare game mode to be played on the smallest of the maps that they currently have inside of War Pigeons. Now, I don't want to use the existing War Pigeons layout, but that's the size of map that I want to see. And on a map that small, it can get pretty overwhelming to have a lot of people with mortars. Vehicles certainly don't make sense, so they would just get tossed out the window entirely. But the mortar spam really comes down to the number of people that I want to see in the game. Instead of just being 12 on 12, I want to see 20 on 20, a 40-player trench warfare game in these really small maps. Now hang on for a second as I explain this a little more, because yes, it will be chaotic, but I think there's going to be some really cool stuff that could be done to offset that. I mean, I've already talked about how I want to get rid of mortars. We could probably also adjust the frag spam a little bit. Maybe instead of nerfing the frags, just cut the number of grenades in half compared to what they currently are. Give them a significantly longer refresh period for when you get those resupplies from support people. I think there's some good things that DICE could do to really reduce the amount of frag spam and keep it focused on weapons without the frags, without the gas. Keep it focused on the rifles specifically, which I think is really important in the current Back to Basics game mode. The other thing I want to do is make this an objective-based game, but not in the way that we currently have War Pigeons or Domination. What I really want to see is a game mode that focuses in on squads. I want to see squad-based objectives. So in my 20v20 game mode, with these really small maps, what I want is 4 squads of 5 people each. Now, each squad would be given a certain area of this very small map, and they have to hold that area free of enemies. They have to maintain at least one person in that squad in order for it to be held. If the entire squad is wiped out of a given area, well, there's a point for the enemy team. Every time the squad for a given area is wiped, the other team gets a point. I think that could offer some really interesting objective-based play inside of some really small maps. It would force your team to really play as a squad. You'd have to balance the number of scouts and support and medics. You'd basically have one of each class, and then you would have one extra person. Probably an extra medic would be my opinion, because you want to be able to keep reviving people on your team. Now, there's a lot that can be done beyond these very basic rules, but I think the core concept could work out really well, especially if you get the maps right.
Enemy medic there!
Now, for the existing maps, there's already St. Quentin Scar and Ballroom Blitz, both of which have some pretty tremendous trench layouts already. I really enjoy those areas of those maps where you have those trenches. Besides those two, even Monte Grappa has some trenches in it up by the fortress. Now, I'm not particularly fond of the trench layout that's currently in, like, War Pigeons for Monte Grappa, but we could adjust the map a little bit, move the playable area over just enough so that you would be in the middle of the trenches for the most part. Don't let people get into the fortress. Let them get up to the fortress maybe, but not quite into the fortress. But balance it so that each side has some hilltop. We don't want to have one side just aiming straight down on the other the whole time. It would be an unfair elevation advantage. For the other maps, however, well, we're probably going to play the fortresses in those because I don't really remember seeing any good trench layouts in there. The same goes for Sinai Desert. I'm honestly not quite sure what to do there. Maybe in Sinai Desert we could do in the town, but that might not work so well. Maybe we'll leave Sinai Desert out of it. And lastly, there's Amiens, which frankly I think would be phenomenal inside of the city, fighting across the railroad tracks where the two bridges are. We could have one team on each side of the bridge, which would allow us to have that no man's land where the railroad tracks are and where the bridges are. You'd be able to cross it if you were daring enough and lucky enough in order to get to the other side. But generally speaking, you would have a good no man's land in between both sides of the teams. And I think that's a fairly important aspect. Yeah, you're going to see people rushing up into the trenches over the top, trying to get a lot of kills, trying to take down those last squad members to generate the points for their team. But ultimately, you want to have the trenches and then the no man's land. You want to have people peeking over, throwing a grenade every now and then, getting rid of mortars, getting rid of vehicles, but really focusing on the rifles in this game mode. I think it'd be really fun, really intense with 40 people, 20 versus 20, and it would provide a lot of opportunity for new gameplay modes inside the DLC that we're going to get in March. If you haven't heard about it already, there's already a bunch of talk about trench warfare and this underground fortress that's going to have a lot of dark hallways and corners to look around, and it would be very conducive to the whole trench warfare kind of environment. Of course, this is just my opinion, but I think that the current back-to-basics gameplay is frankly the most fun game mode that Battlefield 1 has right now. I think at this point in time, I am really enjoying the balance that this creates with everyone having standard issue rifles, not having to worry about scouts versus assault class up close, not having to worry about medics with their auto-loading rifles from a medium distance, not having to worry about all those different mixes of classes that can frankly make it really difficult for scouts and medics to play the objective. I think there's a lot of opportunity for better objective-based gameplay with all of the classes if we can have a standard issue rifles game mode focused on trench warfare, but create something with a little more chaos, a little more intensity to it, having 20 versus 20, battling from the trenches with that no man's land that you have to cross, keeping your squads together, protecting your objective, and giving you a point every time you take out an entire squad from someone else's objective on the other team. What do you think of this idea, though? I would love to hear what you think about the current Back to Basics game mode, as well as the idea of trench warfare inside of Battlefield 1. Does this idea, does the description that I just gave you sound like a game mode that you would like to play? If it does, or even if it doesn't, drop some comments down below. I would love to hear from you and what you think of this idea. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like this, or hit the thumbs down button if you don't like it, and also subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot of great content coming up. I do appreciate your time. Thanks for watching, and happy gaming.
Aufpassen, Maschinengewehr!